We have to become the person we are meant to be first, to live the life we are destined to live. We all encounter challenges, obstacles, and even dark times on that journey, but we are not alone. This podcast will give all seekers hope and understanding that others have walked that path before us. My guests will share how they overcame the challenges and what helped them turn the corner. Listening to their inspiring stories, get motivated and take action to transform into that amazing person that you really are. Your voice needs to be heard and your message must be shared. My name is Sabine Quenberg and I am your host. I'm glad that you're here to listen to my podcast where you can discover how to become the more incredible version of yourself. Are you ready? Let's get on this journey together. Now, let's dive into our guest interview. My guest today is singer-songwriter Alison Joy Williams. She is the wife of a retired naval officer that decided after her children had grown that she would go after a musical career as both a songwriter and vocal artist, even though the musical industry had labeled her too old to be successful. Allison is sharing her story of breaking through the challenges and how she became the successful artist she is today. Welcome, Allison. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Allison and I are part of a best-selling book. Actually, it is the #1 bestseller on Amazon, the musical imprint.
Yay!
So isn't that exciting?
It's very exciting. Very exciting. I'm so glad to be and proud to be a part of it with such amazing writers.
I couldn't agree more. We were all together 24 authors sharing compelling stories and pivotal moments connected to a song. And if you'd like to get a copy of this book, you can order it at Amazon. We will put a link in the show notes so you can get it right there. And if you happen to be in Nashville, Tennessee on November 2nd, I invite you to come to our book signing event. The link will also be in the show notes. And if you listen to this episode after the event, no worries, you still can get a signed copy from me. Just get in touch with me. Allison, once again, welcome. And I can't wait to hear your journey of overcoming challenges, obstacles, and then really becoming the artist that you are today. Not only are you writing your own songs, but you also write songs for other great artists and are so successful today. However, you really didn't start out this way, right?
Oh, yeah. Typical got married, not typical, but my husband and I met in high school and got married when he was in college. He was Naval Officer. He was an ROTC heading for flight school. And so he was a Navy pilot and career officer. And I was a stay-at-home mom, but at the same time, my husband, who I had known since I was a teenager, had always heard me sing in choir and things like that. And he would see something and say, you need to go do that. You need to go sing. And I wasn't encouraged, I should say, by my parents and stuff to go after any kind of musical career at the time. My parents owned a thoroughbred farm. I grew up on a farm with horses and rode and showed competitively quarter horses and everything. And that was kind of my thing. But it was never, as much as I love the horses and love competing and everything, the music was truly in my heart.
I believe the gifts and talents given to us by our Creator eventually will break through. And so it did with you. You started your career late, not until your kids were out of the house, right?
I had empty nest syndrome like you wouldn't believe. It was kind of like, now what do I do with my life? I have been a supportive wife and mother and all of that. And I had worked outside of the home, but never in anything that was a career. And so the first thing was my sisters looked at me and said, well, it's time to start showing horses again. Okay. So I got back into riding and showing horses. And the one thing about going to the big 5-day shows with the quarter horses, there's always a country music honky tonk around somewhere to go sit in with the band and sing and everything. And that kind of got me back into that. But when I went over to visit with my husband in Hawaii, we were sitting there one day and he said, look, I can't give you back what you gave up, but I can support you in chasing whatever you want now. If you want to go after the music and you want to do what you want to do that way, I'm here working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Go find something. I was like, okay.
Go find something. I love it. And you sure did, right? You found a music conference that you went to. Tell us about that.
Really what it was is a songwriters conference. And they had all kinds of professional people from BMI. It was sponsored by BMI. And they had all kinds of hit songwriters, a few music placement supervisors at that time, but mostly it was writers and A&R people from record labels and stuff. And you could go there and they had different symposiums. So you could go in and sit in and listen. You could be in groups with a hit writer and have them, or a record label industry people, and listen to your music and get a critique and everything. And I thought, this is what I need. This is because I'd been reading books and learning about the music industry and everything. And that's one of the biggest things I could tell any songwriter that's looking at traveling to Nashville or anything: get a book, read a book first about the music industry. So I went, and my first mentoring session was with Jeffrey Steele, who is an amazing, multi-hit writer. And it kind of went from there. And I was, at that time, some of the industry people that heard my music and everything, finally he sat me down. Charlie Feldman from New York sat me down and said, you need to go to Nashville. You need to write with other people besides your one co-writer. You need to think about writing for other people besides just what you like to sing. And it was like, okay. It was interesting when I went to Kauai. One of the things I had ended up singing one evening, and the next morning when I had this mentoring session with Charlie Feldman from New York, and he heard one of my songs and then heard me sing live. And he was kind of going back and forth with me. And he said, man, Allison, I just hate it. If I'd met you 10 years ago, I would be picking up the phone and calling all kinds of record labels right now because, he said, your voice is amazing. You've got great songs. And he said, this is where, things are going. And they're looking for those singer-songwriters and everything. And he said, but in this day and age, he said, with everything going on in country music and rock and pop and everything, if you're over 25 as a female, you're not going to get signed. They're just, he said, record labels are just going to look at me and think I'm crazy if I walk in there with you. Mm-hmm. And I had to laugh at the time. And I said, so Charlie, I said, you said that if you'd met me 10 years ago, when I was 25, you could get me a record deal. And he said, I'd sure as heck work on it. And I started laughing, and he goes, what? And I said, I haven't seen 25 in 20 years, so I don't think I'm doing too bad.
Good for you. Did this let you down? Did this news let you say, okay, it's done? Or what did you make of it?
Well, I still knew that I would probably always be. I mean, I was perfectly happy in, anytime if I can sing in front of the kitchen sink, I'm okay with that. I love performing and I love being in front of people. But I already knew that in a lot of ways. And, but I got a a rope thrown to me, I should say, the next year when I went back, in meeting Stephen Melrose, and he was an A&R guy from Island Def Jam Records, which I believe uploads to Sony or whatever. But he was primarily a heavy metal guy that, looked for artists more in Europe and everything. And but he came to me one morning. I was way up 7:00 in the morning watching the sunrise, over the beach and everything. And he came walking by searching for a cup of coffee. And he said, "Did you see the fight in the bar last night?" And I went, "What fight?" I was there until the bar closed. We were all just hanging out. And he goes, "No," he said, all of us label and industry people were sitting in the back. And he said, and all of a sudden we heard this voice. And he said, the table got tipped over, drinks were flying, 2 guys got knocked down, because we were all looking to who was going to grab what we heard, this voice. And he said, and we came around the corner and we went, "Oh, well, it's Allison." And I went, "Thanks, Stephen, thanks." And he goes, "No," he said, "Listen, hon," he said, "you were singing a straight up 12-bar blues." And he goes, "That's what I listen to in my car." And he goes, "I sign heavy metal bands, but I love blues." And he said, "Let me tell you something. Write your country, write your pop, write your rock songs, and let them go where they want to go." And he said, "But you keep the blues stuff that you're writing for yourself, because with that genre, they don't care how old you are. They don't care what you look like. You better just bring the music." And it was an eye opener for me and that's kind of the style of even country music that I did. Mine was country blues. I was, always putting that other drift to it. And so that's where there became a change in how I saw my music.
Yeah, that is fantastic. That's a great story, because sometimes an unusual circumstance all of a sudden can open our eyes, right? Say, "Oh, I never thought of it," right? And then after that, you started producing more of the blues and singing more of the blues, right?
I kind of did a shift again of, because by that time I was living in Nashville and I was still writing, and hoping I'd had one hold with a song. And it was part of my goals in going to Nashville was I wanted to be able to record stuff that I'd written and have somebody think it was worthwhile pitching to artists, which I got. And my next goal was within 2 years of being there, I wanted to be able to have a hold on one of my songs. And I got that. It was on hold for about 2 weeks with Faith Hill. And it didn't get cut, but I figured, what, I'm going in the right direction. I'm writing songs that are getting good enough for people to hear. And it was, again, my husband's fault. I was walking around the house one day and singing one of my songs that I had recorded. He goes, "How come you haven't recorded that?" And I said, "Well, I'm putting, our money, because it's not cheap to do demos. It's not cheap to go into the studio and record stuff. It takes a bit of money." And I said, "Well, I'm, putting our money into me doing demos, hoping I get a cut." And he goes, "Well, if I'm going to pay for stuff that you're creating, can you at least cut a few things that I like to listen to?" So I went in and started working, pulled in a couple of songs that I'd written before, never recorded and things, and started working on the Blonde Haired Blues album, which was my first real full featured album.
Allison, with the journey that you had from being a mom, a wife, and then slowly getting into the music industry, really pursuing your passion, can you recall one time where you were doubting yourself? You were unsure of that transition that you went through of becoming an artist. Was there like really a setback or really a challenging time?
A couple of them. There's always, life is never linear, and there's always ups and downs. I think the first time that was like, when we were still in Hawaii, and my husband had moved from being a active duty and had been offered a corporate job within the Department of Defense and everything over there. And so we were kind of, creating our lives there. But I had started going back and forth to Nashville. And Dennis was traveling a lot around the Pacific Rim and do it for his work. And we, were able to be home for a week together. And he looked at me and he goes, "Can you see yourself doing less time in Nashville than what you're doing now?" And I was spending about 2 weeks out of every 2 months in Nashville. And I said, well, if I go less, I might as well not go at all. It's kind of a must be present to win thing at that time. And he goes, okay. So he comes home the next day and he goes, I can get you as far as Memphis. Will that work? And I went, what did you do? And he said, well, there was an opening. They're looking for somebody to go back on active duty. And he said, it was offered to me. And so I took it. And I said, "You're putting the uniform back on?" He goes, "Yeah." And so he went back on active duty and got stationed in Memphis. And so then I ended up in Nashville. We ended up getting a place in Nashville, and he would stay in a little apartment on the weekdays in Memphis and then come home on the weekends. So we spent 3 years with him, seeing him on the weekends, or me going to every now and then I'd make a trip to Memphis. But it was a lot. And during that time when I was in Nashville, those first several years, I, again, career shifts kind of thing. I got there and I'd been writing a lot and it was before I'd really made the decision to put myself back out there as an artist. With the blues and everything, I had met a young man who was very gifted, very talented artist out of Canada. Started working with him a lot, invested a lot of time, effort, money into him. It didn't work out, as far as, because I was basically had started working as his manager more, and just another avenue of the music industry. And because he was the age, at everything as opposed to me. So I put a lot of eggs in that basket and it imploded. And I was devastated on a lot of different levels because I had invested not only time, effort, and money, but also emotionally. And I walked into Nashville Songwriters Association that day, and I was set up with a co-write with a friend of mine. And it was the day after everything had just massively imploded with this artist. And they had a little basket filled with inspirational little writings. And Cherise Spoltori, who was the member services manager there, handed me the basket and she said, "Pick something, get something out. You need some inspiration, today." And I opened it up and I thought this was so interesting later on, that you'll get the connection, but I opened it up and it said, "It's never too late to be who you're supposed to become."
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
And my friend, Lorna Flowers, bless her, looked at me and she said, "I don't write country music. I don't write blues songs generally, don't really like blues, but we're going to go write a blues song today. Come on." And she said, "Because I don't like the blues, but I like your version of the blues. So let's go write." And it was like, okay. And that put me back on that track of really where I was supposed to be.
Isn't that interesting how a situation that kind of sets you back, that really brings you into that stage of, oh my gosh, what did I lose? And I put everything into this relationship with that young artist, and then I just got dropped. But throughout that experience, and then, oh my goodness, getting that inspirational quote that that says who you are to become, then really led you down the path of creating and writing more of the songs and blues songs. And did those songs ended up on a CD?
I finished the Blonde Haired Blues. I had kind of started recording stuff, but that really solidified me going after and doing the project Blonde Haired Blues. And I ended up, it's interesting again, the connection between you and I ended up meeting a lady at a songwriters round who really enjoyed my music and everything. And she happened to be from Germany. And she was a writer for a music magazine based in Germany. And she had been very involved in the music industry background and everything over there. And she said, let's take a single. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's just take a single. She said, I know all of the radio stations, over in Germany. I have contacts because they all, feed into the music magazine that I work for and everything. And she said, let's send something out and see what happens with it. And it's like, all right. So, it was very organic. I literally, took a whole bunch of my CDs and then it was interesting. I had all of these songs I'd written, but I had one cover song on there, and it was my rendition of House of the Rising Sun. Mm-hmm. And she said, this one, because it's a cover, and she said, people will recognize it. And she said, so let's send that out there. And we did. I think it was like there were 300 CDs plus a second CD burned with just the single on there, and a bio blurb and everything. And we put it all into a package and we sent it out to some 200 radio stations in Germany. And she called me one day and she goes, guess what? And I said, what? And she goes, you've made the top 40 on German radio. And it was,
wow, congratulations.
It was kind of funny. It was like, really didn't expect it at all. I was just hoping I'd get some radio play somewhere. And so that was a fun start. And, that also helped me, anytime you have success builds on success. And it was like, that opened the door for me to write with more writers and get out there. It's interesting because that was the impetuousness that got us going to Germany in a lot of ways. My husband was retiring from active duty. They said, you've done 29 and a half years. Goodbye. Go home. And he got an offer to go back to work for, the Department of Defense as a contractor in Stuttgart. And at the same time he got that email. The same morning, I had an email that I received from a gentleman by the name of Klaus Duss, who was a radio DJ for a blues program over in Germany. And he said, hey, if you ever come to Germany, please look me up because I also do promotion for live shows and I'd love to get you on stage sometime. So Dennis and I kind of looked at each other and went, Europe, here we come.
What piece of advice would you give a young artist today?
Don't beat your head against the wall. Find the open door. And if there isn't an open door, find a bathroom window.
I like that.
There's always an avenue. And music has changed. The music industry has changed so much. But also continually reevaluate what your success is. Like it's just like when I set my goal that I want to have a hold. I didn't say I want to have a hit song within 10 years with a hit artist. It was like, no, I want affirmation that what I'm doing is the correct path. And I was talking about the musical imprint the other day, and I said, it's in when you're making music or writing books or anything, it comes a point where you have to decide, what is my legacy? Not so much what is my bank account. Nowadays, there's so many ways you can put your music out there. And the pyramid is so narrow, and I would never tell anybody to, go after the top, to not go after the top of that pyramid. If that's really what you want, chase it, but don't forget to celebrate the small wins.
I love that. What you just said is so, so true. We forget to celebrate the small wins. And that is really what makes our journey so interesting, because when you see those overnight successes, sometimes it took them years.
Right.
And we know no matter what we do, if it is in the entertainment industry or any kind of career that we are pursuing or that we have, it's not the end goal, it's the journey that counts.
Oh,
absolutely. And so you better enjoy the journey. So I liked what you said about that.
When you were asking about ups and downs, was there ever a moment where you doubted yourself? I remember the movers had showed up to our apartment in Hawaii and were packing us all out, and Dennis was, keeping track of them, and I was pointing out stuff. But all of a sudden I was standing in the middle of the living room and my hands started shaking and I started crying, and Dennis came in and he goes, what's the matter? What's going on? And I said, what if I fail? What if I go to Nashville and never get a cut, never write a good enough song that somebody else would want to sing? What if you're giving up and we're leaving here, and, you're giving up your job to go back on active duty, which, could change his career path later on and everything. And I said, what if I fail? And he goes, your biggest failure right now is not going and doing it.
You eventually did not let that fear hold you back, and you went for it, and look all the beautiful things that came out of it, all the beautiful songs that you created and the people that you made happy. Good for you, Allison. Wow, this was such a wonderful conversation that I had, and thanks for sharing your insights from in the music industry and giving a few pointers. One last thing that I wanted to ask you. A young artist today, we both know that the music industry has changed. It used to be that you had to find your agent, you had to find a label that would then bring you out, hopefully, to the top 40 and whatnot. But that does not exist anymore. There's still agents, there's still labels, but they're not looking for, okay, I'm going to build you up. They're actually looking for people who are already having a following on YouTube or the social media following. So how, from your perspective, has the music industry changed? And if somebody wants to start now, what do they need to do?
I think one of the biggest things they need to do is build their following regionally. Don't worry about nationally. Don't worry about having to do try to tour all over and everything until you build yourself a fan base regionally. Start with your town, expand from there to your county or your state. Start getting involved with the festivals. Most everybody, a lot of people, they start out playing at a bar or a small venue and everything. Always try to increase the capacity of where you're playing so that you can build that fan base. You get a big enough fan base, and then promote it on. Of course, there's all the promotion on social media and everything, but build that organic fan base locally.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Allison, it was so wonderful having this conversation, having you on the show and sharing your story and giving your advice. And I am so grateful. I wish you all the best. Keep writing, keep singing, and hopefully we will meet in person soon and maybe we can sing together.
Absolutely. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Allison is such a great storyteller. No wonder why she is so successful in telling stories with music. Talking about stories, her story in the book, The Musical Imprint, is reflecting on a song that made an impact on her. And that song is A Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Now, she actually recorded a cover of that song. So I would like to play part of her recording of A Wonderful World. Until I see you again, always remember, follow your dreams, serve from the heart, and live the life you imagine.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what